Welcome to this episode of the Trend Detection Podcast. We're back with our regular series and talking about the truth around predictive maintenance with my colleague Nat Ford. I'm sure a few of you have listened to previous episodes where we've discussed various different topics around predictive maintenance, and we've got a good one today as well. It's all around predictive maintenance mistakes, and I'm going to and anyone who's sort of listened to these sessions before will know that Nat takes the lead, especially with the opening. I'll call it the opening statement, but we're not in court or anything, so it's probably not quite that. But I'll let Nat introduce himself and maybe why we're talking about this topic today. So over to you, Nat.
Hello. Thanks, Noel. Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you all. I'm Nathaniel. I was a sales director at Senseye, and as you will probably know, we were acquired last year by Siemens. We're now fully Siemens, as witnessed by my shirt, my undershirt, my collar, my shoes. I'm fully branded. And within the organisation, I'm trying to do what we were doing before, but at scale. So getting out and meeting lots of clients. But instead of it being in the core team, if you're one of our clients, you met the core team originally. So we're trying to replicate ourselves and meet as many people we can who have the passion, the appetite, the wherewithal, and the KPIs to go out and talk about Senseye and to start and initiate projects and to help companies to see the benefit of predictive maintenance in their environment and then to scale, because that's the whole point of these projects. If you scale, you get the full change of approach and benefit. Today we're going to talk about mistakes people make. And you might think, well, that sounds like a kind of a twist on things you've done before. And, you know, if me and I'll continue doing these sessions for the next 4 years, you'll probably find that they very heavily come back to the same topics. But those topics are the topics of PDM projects. The nature of what we do as a business starts off with communicating to a market to help people to start thinking about and understanding predictive maintenance in and of itself and predictive maintenance within their environment. And that's no mean task. That's a challenge. It's a fun and interesting process, but it needs a lot of consideration. And getting from A to B, if B existed and B was a group of people who fully understood what predictive maintenance was and should be in their environment, then everything that stands between you, A and B, is potentially something that could be described as a mistake or a misunderstanding or a lack of knowledge or whatever. So we could talk for a long time and have done and will today and will do in the future about those things because they evolve and change and we get better at conversing and we get better at pre-understanding what people's issues might be and what their challenges and mistakes might be, so helping them to mitigate them and navigate them. So if you feel there's some repetition, then I'll take that as a compliment because these are things that we should obsess about and help the market to understand. So that said, should we jump in and start said discussion?
Yeah. So I guess, and on the back of what you're saying, actually, I don't think it's also good to revisit topics because as we talk to new customers and new prospects, and even internally at Siemens as well, we'll have new angles on the same topics. You see what I mean? And new insights absolutely. To bring. So that's the way I'd like to look at it. But in terms of the topic today, I guess what we did earlier, we sort of broke it down into sort of five different sections. So how to, I'll break it down, I guess. So how to initially, the initial decision to run a project, how to take it on internally, which possibly is something that's not thought about enough, I guess. The common assumptions made or even before the start of the project, building the wrong team, so who should be in that team, who shouldn't, etc. And then expecting too much from vendors, or what should the vendor be doing versus the customer, vice versa, what's the balance there? And then I guess the cherry on the top, as it were, is the metrics that should be in place or measured for the return on investment. So I guess that's everything. So where do you want to start, Matt, I guess?
Well, I think that we should start by saying that, as we've already mentioned, some of these things are repeated topics, but we meet them every day. Every time we have a new client, we have to look and consider these angles. And we could have put 5 completely other things on the list. But this session should really be about us talking through those, and hopefully, for people who listen to this, they'll be somewhere in a cycle, and they'll get them to pause and think, maybe we should take a slight change in direction of that, or maybe we should filter that into the discussion, whatever it might be. That should be the useful thing. So let's start. Yeah, let's talk about the initial decision to run a project. So from a sales perspective, it's always interesting to, well, from a sales and marketing perspective, so the both of us, we're hoping that we can find the people and engage with the people in organisations who are thinking that they should start considering having a PDM approach, predictive maintenance approach within their organisation. But what does that mean? What are the traps therein? When a company starts or has an initial decision to run a project, that's probably the most important moment for them to define what it is that they're trying to achieve, when they want to achieve it by, how they want to achieve it. And I think, this is an early stage, so there can't be that many mistakes, but I think the earliest mistake that organisations start to make is thinking that all that domain expertise and knowledge sits outside of their organisation and outside of their purview, and that they can, I don't know what the approaches are now, go and ask Google or go and ask ChatGPT, Ken as I call it, or whatever route they have for going and asking the ether that question, or a question about PDM. But actually, a really responsible way of starting and setting out, not making that mistake, is to inquire within the organisation of themselves. Let's see who knows who they are. This could be a plant manager. It might be somebody who works in a digitalisation team. It might be head of maintenance, it might be engineer. But someone who has, from their own volition or through a meeting, been tasked with going and understanding how to start a project looking at predictive maintenance. The very first thing they should say is, what is our state of play? And what do we know about where it is we could get to? What have we heard about? What have we seen happen in other areas? What have we seen at shows? And start to define that so that they're not pulled off course by whoever they happen to engage with first. Or not pulled off course with whoever has a strong voice internally. The guy whose cousin works at company X, or the person who doesn't believe in technology, or whatever, various different versions of that. So starting off with a core nugget of saying, here we are, the footsteps of an investigation. What is it that we're doing now from a maintenance perspective? What are our challenges? What are the things that we can describe that we know we can fix that would be a benefit, whether that's horrendous amounts of downtime due to machine failure, or incrementally need to increase uptime because the board's asking them to, or some derivation thereof. Or issues with quality, for example, because of machines that are difficult to control. So it could be a whole bunch of different things. So understanding that, understanding what they want to solve, what they want to solve it by. And the reason I say that's a mistake is because we have so many conversations with organisations where they probably think that they've got a robust agenda because they're inviting people in to come and talk about predictive maintenance. But actually what they're hoping is that the market will come and tell them a load of stuff. Probably very much in the way that I feel currently about all this evolution of AI chat engines, where I intuitively know that there's probably lots of opportunity and things that they can help me do. But I don't know what they are. So if I was going to go and buy a solution, which I'm not, but if I was going to go and buy a solution, I wouldn't sit down and write what are the 5 to 10 things that I want to achieve for me and then go and find a vendor who could do it. I'd expect the vendors to come and do some magic tricks and dance around. And that's I know now that would be a mistake, because it would lead me into a process that was untethered from the start and open to being pulled in the wrong direction by the wrong people. That sounds nefarious. I don't mean it in a nefarious way, but not being in control.
Actually, interesting you mentioned sort of AI there as well, because it's often something we talk with. So we talk about ourselves as an AI project, but is there a danger of focusing too much on how does the AI work?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we'd had this conversation in any time in history up to January, I'd have said, "Oh, everyone should stop worrying about AI. It's not going to take the doctor's job away. AI is a tool." Or a set of tools, and more importantly, with our product, you don't need to worry about it. In fact, we should never mention it. In fact, I wish I hadn't told you it was AI. It's just predictive maintenance. That still stands, but I think now we can actually start to classify and say there are some things where you may want to remain fascinated by the AI-ishness of them, like GDPR, which is constantly fascinating, and solutions like ours, where you're really wasting your time if you're bothering to breathe in air and then speak about or ask questions about the AI. It's not even business. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's just the stuff that underpins it. It's interesting, but it shouldn't in any way guide a decision. You know, if you're any of the kind of people that we meet, bar and a specialist, any of the other people and folk that we engage with in a process of appreciating predictive maintenance, won't have the underlying skill set to appreciate or understand the nuanced stuff around the AI. So why worry about it? I've said it before. You know, look at my iPhone. I don't know what happens inside here, and I'm certainly not going to go to the Apple shop and I'll start asking them about the motherboard. Do they have one of those? I don't know. It doesn't matter. I can play solitaire on it, make phone calls, take screenshots, and that's the functionality I need. So yes, it would be a mistake to start off your project. And in fact, that segues into one of the other things we talk about as a mistake. And you see it all the time because it seems sort of intuitive that should be the case, but it's not. So let's role play a meeting that never happened, but someone says, "Hey, Niall, we've got to get on with something predictive maintenance now. You know, we keep getting told our maintenance practice isn't good enough, and we should be using data to get better insights. Can you go and start a project to understand the predictive maintenance solutions available? But at the same time, can you work out if we can build one ourselves? Can't be that hard. Go to W.H. Smith and buy some off-the-shelf AI algorithms, I believe they're called. That's a sexy term, isn't it? Algorithms. And we can piece together a predictive maintenance solution. It must be easy. Loads of people have done it. That's a big, big mistake. That's going to cost you quite a lot of years of development time and heartache and disappointment. Like everything else in life, if you need a car, you don't build one. You go to a car dealership or Parker's, depending on your budget, and buy a vehicle. And that's where this stuff sits. Of course, it's slightly different, but that's where this stuff should sit. And there will be some companies who have some core competencies around AI and technology. But in our experience, we've yet to meet one who successfully build a scalable predictive maintenance solution and are not hampered by all the things that we learned about years ago and ruled out. There's also the ongoing process that even if you did successfully manage, if you had a very small requirement, a very small number of machines and some very set things you were looking for, you might just get away with using some internal folk to build a solution. But that's not the beginning. That's not the end of it. That's the beginning, right? You've created something. You want to keep evolving it. And you're not going to have a team of 30, 40 AI people who are constantly getting market feedback from all the other companies and making it best of breed. So that's a big mistake. Don't do it. Go to the market. See what's available. Understand it. Premised on the need that you have described.
And is that...
There you go. I've just struck number 2 off the list. Taking it on internally. Don't do it.
Don't do it. But then in terms of what we said about before a project, what are some of the sort of common assumptions people make leading up to, I guess, obviously from a Senseye perspective?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. I was a lot more passionate about this point a year ago because of what we were finding in the market, and maybe it's a coincidence of the meetings I've been to, or maybe it's a trend. Who knows? But it seems to become less offensive to my sensitive sales ears. But the biggest issues were what people thought. Coming back to AI again, what people think PDM is and how it should work. And have quite deeply ingrained assumptions which are incorrect. It's just surprising, given that I'm not sure whether the exposure would have come to have these biases. But one of the things that makes our product unique, as you know, is that we don't obsess about failures. We're going to obsess about ending. We obsess about what's normal. So our product looks out and tries to understand what is normal for a fleet of things. And then it starts to understand deviation from normal. And that can take on a number of forms. It can simply be a description of deviation from normal. The other end of the scale, it can be a very accurate description of a deviation from normal with a strong prediction of what type of failure mode is going to occur, when it's going to occur, what the remaining useful life is. In reality, it was discussed on other podcasts. That stuff's fantastic, really interesting to look and easy to talk about from a sales perspective. It makes up a fairly small proportion of the things that we do, because if you're going to be really good at what we do, you want to pick stuff up in a very early stage before you're going to bother describing the failure mode. And it's about getting the balance right, those two things. However, within that sort of scale of potential things that can happen, You meet people who have some very deeply ingrained assumptions and biases about what they want and how it should happen, and have questions about not just these futuristic predictions of failure. And let's remember, it's predictive maintenance, not predictive failure. It's about predicting the need for failure, for predicting the need for maintenance. So there's an obsession about predicting the failure, but also coupled with that, this demand to be told the accuracy of predictions and details of the numbers of things that have to be done and data points that have to be given and quantities of data to change precisely, to turn that knob of reliability. No such thing. With the idea that you could reach 100%. If any company could reach 100% on predicting failures, they'd be better off working out what the balls in the lottery machine are going to do. I haven't said that before. I'm not going to use that again. Cringe. It's probably true. We're not. So the assumption there, the mistake, is to operate or look at the market, asking questions that are trying to find the thing that does the thing that you made up in your head. You'll probably find one in terms of their marketing. You won't find it in terms of delivery. So, I guess then what is the mistake? The mistake is not to allow yourself to be educated on what is possible within predictive maintenance, and to act on your assumptions about what should be possible. And those assumptions tend to the hardest ones that we see less and less now, but the hardest ones to get around are where people think that they are currently doing some kind of preventative maintenance and they're going to move into a world that's all predictive, and that this tool they purchase will look at their fleet of things and tell you where they are in their lifetime, when they're going to fail, why they're going to fail. I mean, it's just, you shouldn't have to think about that very long to realise that it's a bit crazy. Most systems, if you think about most processes, if you talk about averages, averages apply to groups of things, they apply to individuals. Individual things are nuanced. Whilst they may fall into a distribution of behaviour, you could accurately say on roughly what's going to happen in the factory environment, but if you talk about individual things, you're not going to have that kind of precision. So what we're aiming to do, and what you should be trying to find, is a company that successfully provides you information that allows you to avoid negatives, as opposed to obsessively measure and describe negatives. I've made that point enough.
And it's the best analogy for it. I guess what I've heard in the past, it's not abandoning all your other maintenance approaches, but it's a case of adding another tool to your toolbox, which one of our clients I've interviewed before has used the analogy. That's what Senseye is. It's like another tool in the toolbox to help.
I don't know if this is a good analogy or not, but one that I've heard used by me.
Must be good then. Must be good.
I was joking and being arrogant. I'm not that arrogant. I'm not sure if it particularly fully works, but I like it. You're right. So people think there's going to be a wholesale change, or people sometimes make the assumption of a wholesale change from a particular type of maintenance, this new type of maintenance called predictive maintenance, and that will change their relationship entirely with their assets and all of their behaviours. Whereas in fact, as you rightly say, what we're doing is adding another stream of information into an existing process. So we will augment and add value to. And so the analogy is a sat nav in a car. When do they come? 90s, 2000s? I don't know when they first appeared. So TomTom, for example, they don't change the way you drive. It doesn't change your starting point or your destination. It changes an aspect of the process of the way that you drive. It gives you additional information that makes your driving process and experience more efficient and better. And if you were driving for a living, it would probably have a return on investment. Probably make you take better routes, more efficient routes, whatever you're trying to achieve with. But it doesn't fundamentally change everything about what you're doing. It makes you better at it. And that's, it would be a mistake to think what we laid out at the beginning, and it would not be a mistake to think that that is what you're trying to achieve with the predictive maintenance tool. An additional source of information that augments your current process. But over time, with confidence, will have a big impact on the way you do maintenance, but not in a kind of instructive way, by making better the existing team members, making them better at their day-to-day and weekly assessments of what needs doing now, what needs doing later, and discovering things that don't need doing, that were on the list.
So I guess that could lead in. It's almost like looking at a bigger picture, because obviously we've got many successes where things like unplanned downtime has been saved, and there's some big savings in lots of different customers. But actually, there's almost a wider benefit, and it's again something we talk about a lot. It's like a cultural shift, but it's like a mindset thing. Like you said, it's actually more just being more productive, more efficient, that side of things. Rather, the big bang results are great and the savings are great, but there's also I don't know what I'm saying, like longer term benefits, for want of a better phrase.
Yeah, I'm not completely sure what you're saying. I'm joking, but I think okay. So we talk a lot about this thing about cultural change, and I've often said that it is a mistake to think there's going to be a cultural change. You're not trying to change culture, and it would be arrogant of a company like Siemens as was, or sorry, Senseye as was, or us now as part of Siemens to think we're going to come in and change culture. We don't need to. What we need to do is work out how to make our technology appear seamlessly and the information to come out of our technology and appear seamlessly within the discussions where it needs to. So in a way, the starting point, the goal should be to not change culture. And as a company has specifically said, we want to engage with you in a way to facilitate change in our culture. However, having sort of banged on about that for quite a while, we do see and acknowledge that in our successful clients, successful deployments, over time there was a change of culture. But that's dictated by a group of individuals, by experience and exposure, beginning to trust the system in a way that allows them to use it as not increasingly not just a stream of information, but a bedrock of the things that they start to do. But that's not an out of the box module that you sell that starts. Our deployment doesn't start with culture change. That's a sort of symbiotic process that happens over a period of time. And will be different in all environments because the starting point is different and the end point it doesn't exist. You continue to change. But yeah, so I think it's a mistake to say that people shouldn't. It's a mistake to say that it's a mistake to think there'll be cultural change, but the need for it and the timing of it and how it happens can be misunderstood. You don't. If you need a big cultural change in order to make a piece of technology successful, then you probably deployed it incorrectly. But if you don't aspire to see a big cultural change over time because it has been deployed correctly, then you're missing the trick.
And I'm making we talked about assumptions. I'm making an assumption that a lot of companies that approach us are they even aware that a technology or something can contribute towards that sort of cultural change or shift, or however we want to describe it? Is it one of those things that, because most people, I guess most people, and I'm a B2B sort of, let's say, SaaS software buyer, and I don't think about cultural change when I'm buying.
Well, I think I suspect that's because of what you're buying for. If you were buying,
Yeah.
I don't want to second guess what you do with your time and budget, but if you were buying a SaaS solution that played a part of lead generating process, then no, you wouldn't want it to change culture. But if you were buying a SaaS solution that was a CRM solution, a sales repository solution that had a load of different modules to it that were supposed to enhance and control the behavior of salespeople, then you might actually have selected that at a management level in order to try and fix an issue with the business, to try and change the culture in the sales environment. And actually, I think of all the people you were going to try and change the culture with, one of the valid ones would be groups of salespeople, like myself. And we'd all say no, we'd all say we didn't want to use it, and then slowly we'd all start using it, and then it'd be adopted, and then you might see some cultural change. But more importantly, you might actually decide at the beginning that as the goal of that deployment was cultural change, you would get your learning and development team involved, and you would work with the vendor and what you know about your own business and your incumbent individuals in L&D to build some training modules with the goal of uptake, user adoption, and cultural change. And you might even call it cultural change. But that, so you might start off with that premise for certain types of SaaS solution. So in answer to your question, absolutely, there are people that when we speak to them, they want to understand how we are going to ensure their successful user adoption and associated cultural change. And depending on where we've been in our evolution, we'll have talked to them about how we can facilitate and how we can help and what we think is right. If you remember 3 years ago, I wanted to get 100 people logging in at each client. And we subsequently concluded that was not the right goal. And that our version of cultural change would come over time via successful deployment. And deployment was about information, not technology. So the information should come out of our technology, or I've repeated this 3 times already, but should come out and be part of an existing system. So I think we discovered it was a less important factor to measuring the success of a deployment.
And actually, this leads on to another one of our PDM mistakes, and it's all around return on investment and metrics. And I guess where I'd like to steer the discussion, a little bit is there's soft. I wouldn't call them soft metrics, but metrics that are harder to measure, and then there's the ones which are very easy. Well, I'd say easier to define. So maybe we could talk about those different buckets, or go off in any direction you want to, Nat.
Yeah, well, let's describe that distribution first, and then we can talk about. It's supposed to be about mistakes, so let's then focus back in on mistakes people make when they're setting their KPIs. Or let's be clear, the biggest mistake people make is not having them.
Yeah.
We'll assume for this conversation that we know that, and people will either will encourage people to have KPIs, but more importantly, the mistake would be to have the wrong KPIs. Let's discuss the KPIs. So if you're looking at the success of a project, you want things which are measurable. They want things which are going to fit the SMART, and I'm not going to try to remember what the acronym stands for, but SMART goals. So in this case, SMART KPIs. And the smartest of all KPIs with a product which is historically talked about reducing unplanned downtime would be to measure the reduction in unplanned downtime. And to measure on a avoided downtime basis, money saved. And that's, none of these things are easy, but that's the easiest of the things there are to do, or the least difficult. And the way that you do that is by getting the right people together in a business and agreeing a cost of downtime associated with a line. And agreeing then with ongoing that if company X raises cases that you react to, that if you can see, oh my gosh, look at that, see what, we would never have heard that, we didn't see it, we didn't smell it, we had no idea what was happening, we've opened it up and we've seen there's terrible things happening with the bearing. We know from experience that if that had continued to go unchecked, this part of this machine would have broken down, and ramifications would have been probably 6 hours downtime. And that's easy. You consolidate a number of those over a 6-month, 12-month period, and you've got a KPI that allows you to say, we have avoided X number of hours at this, therefore avoided this cost, this loss. So that is an ROI. But of course, that's not the only thing companies want to do. We always talk in meetings about how the first year or the first 6 months, the first period is about showing this product working, raising cases, getting the teams to trust that case actually correlates with something that's happening that they couldn't have detected themselves, and that by affecting and changing that thing, they can avoid a negative outcome. But when that's happened, then the second year or the second 6 months or whatever that second period is, they can start to be, once they trust and collectively trust the outcome of Senseye, they can start to be much more precise and correct in the maintenance that they planned for. So they can augment and make better and tweak is probably too polite a word, fix their planned interventions. So that's the second wave. That becomes harder to measure. It becomes easier in terms of time, for example, but it becomes harder to measure in terms of the changes that happen because they're not as direct as a degree of separation. And then right at the end of the scale, you might have things like reputation in the market. If you keep not being able to deliver product, let's say you make a very competitive market and you make a widget, you make yogurt pots, terrible example, you make yogurt pots, or let's think of something else, you make paper, and there are plenty of other people who can supply that paper, and the advantage you have is you're fast at it and you are efficient. You're getting to a point where all your machinery for making your paper is becoming inefficient and you keep missing delivery deadlines. There might be some reputational damage. They might actually have a really big negative effect. I mean, there's other markets where they're very competitive, but you're trying to get things into suppliers. And that difference in the sales guy who's going and meeting and talking about reliability might hang on the reliability of the last 5-10 deliveries. But that's really difficult to measure, reputational impact of increased or decreased efficiency of production. And so when you're starting off and you think, I'd like to live in a world where people just said, yeah, can I have 3 PDMs, please? But we're not there yet, and it wouldn't be as exciting from a sales perspective anyway. So I don't really want that. But in a point where this product has to iteratively prove itself scale, you need to be very clear on your KPIs, and they have to be relevant KPIs, and they have to be measurable, and they have to be achievable. They have to be not just the downtime. So that's complicated, and it's a mistake to let the vendor do it. It's a mistake to think that someone else can come in with a report at the end of a project and say, "No, here, look, you need to be intrinsically linked into that process, wired into it. You need to determine it, and you need to recognise that there are different things that can be measured at different stages in a project." Um, if a lot of clients want to do a very small project in a controlled environment on a small number of assets, which is a mistake, because when you do that, the things that you can measure typically are about us as a business, not about you as a business, not about your processes, etc. Not about uptake, not about the way people react to the information, just about proving the technology. So they're the kind of mistakes people make around that. But we have good solutions for that. So we have processes now. Can we can help companies to understand in detail what those KPIs should be right through a project in the early stages, at the end stages. Um, and sometimes it'll just be one or two, but it's about looking through and establishing what they should be. What you don't want to do is get to the end of a project and not really have any way of substantiating or having a feeling that it's been successful, but not being able to describe that in the corridor to people who are going to hold the purse strings for scale.
I guess, and actually, this sort of links to, I guess, the final point about what a vendor should be in the process, and what a customer, how do they work together? But is it
Yeah.
partly a case in terms of the metrics that we're sort of helping our client or customer to display or to present those numbers internally, or we're helping to prove the ROI, and then subsequently helping them to present those numbers to who they need to within the business to obviously continue the scaling and success onwards and upwards.
Yeah, I think the issue of vendors and expecting too much from them, etc. I think the point that I was really alluding to is more about not being involved enough in the project.
Hmm.
You imagine initial meetings with someone like me and John, or people from another vendor who does similar or different things from us. We'll be telling you about their capabilities or our capabilities and talking about the art of the possible. And it'd be tempting then to say, okay, well, you've asked us for some money to run this trial, or whatever you wanted to call it, because you wouldn't call it a proof of concept. That's me. I wouldn't call it a proof of concept. And then the temptation is to stand back and watch. If you stand back and watch, you're missing out on the project. A successful project with this space, because it's about people and information decisions, not technology. A project needs to involve the people who are going to be using it live, a subset or all of them. It needs to involve the management who are going to be involved in reviewing it, being at steering committees and scaling it. So it needs to have, it's not a stand back and watch issue. It's muck in and be involved. We've got a great team of folk here who can assess and understand and run asset passport sessions, etc. But as much as that can be done intellectually by the client side, should be done by the client side, because it's learning, it's picking up, it's shaping the project. And so if we're going to be clear about it, the big mistake that people make in this issue is thinking that the client is going to bring domain expertise, a box of magic tricks, come and do an install and show something fantastic, like someone coming around and installing a router in your television and a telephone. It's not like that at all. But it can be like that. But when they leave, what have you got? A flashing dashboard. What you need is full involvement. There's probably variations of that, but my view on watching and seeing and being involved in lots of projects is you need an engaged. For every person at Senseye Siemens who is on a project, you need somebody on the other side engaged, matching them time, energy, input, and excitement as well. no doubters. You need people who are excited about getting this project done, explorative, thinking, intellectual about it.
No, exactly. Or another danger is to sort of go, oh, that's a nice. I guess maybe it fits into AI thing. The danger of focusing on the AI is it can be put into a bucket of, well, there's a little AI project to focus on. So if you want to,
Yeah,
here you go, you focus on this little project and
yeah,
put a little bit of effort in or whatever, put it of your time, but rather than putting your heart and soul into it and potentially getting amazing results, in time, in short and longer term.
yeah. I'm going to boil what you just said down to one sentence. Don't
Yeah,
sell it internally as an AI project or a digitalization project. Sell it as a predictive maintenance opportunity for a maintenance team.
exactly. At
Yeah,
scale and across all of your
at
plants.
scale. Yeah.
Cool. No, I think it's been a really good chat. I mean, I guess just to finish that, if there's any sort of final thoughts from your side, just to summarise before we finish, I think we covered a lot of ground, which has been really great.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I say is that we start off these conversations by saying mistakes you should avoid or misunderstandings. We use these negative terms. All they are is let's look at the state of play of where a business is and their appreciation and understanding of what they want to achieve, and let's bring some of our experience of going through projects and help add value to that. They're not mistakes; they're just current state that we will help affect in a useful way as we can.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what, like you said, you mentioned the team at Senseye Siemens, where we're here to support, and help guide you through these, not mistake, but if you've got misconceptions, then we're here to, that's what we're here to do, is sort of help you and help you find the right path, if that's not so cheesy to end on. But maybe it is. But no, it's been really good. And thank you again, Nat, for your time and for another great session and looking at the
Well,
truth
nice to
about
speak to
predictive
you.
maintenance. Really important topic. So yeah, we'll finish for today. We'll be back very soon. Thank you for listening. See you on the next episode and have a good rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Noel.